Hey everyone, this is Amy with Simply Elizabeth Crafts, and let's create with our January paper pumpkin. We're going to create a scrapbook using this photo here of my husband and I, Ben. We were on the Norway trip for this, and here is the paper that we're going to use, and it is called the Marble Elegance, and it coordinates with the Heart of Elegance. It also coordinates with the January paper pumpkin called Hearts for You. So I went through this pack of paper. I'm going to be honest with you, I'm not a big fan of it. I've had a really hard time using it, and I felt though that I needed to use it because I have a whole pack of it. So I decided on this little strip right here that I just moved off and decided to add some basic gray with it. I felt like it kind of complemented and didn't make it not as I don't know, unlikable by me, I guess is the right word to say. So I have a piece of real red in the background for just a small edge around. Really what it's going to end up doing is being a small edge around that white. I put the basic gray at the top, and then I proceed to put the designer series paper at the bottom. I'll go ahead and tell you I'm not a big fan of how that looks, and I will fussy around with it later, and I'll show you, of course, in the video how we end up getting that taken care of. Now, these hearts right here were part of the Paper Pumpkin kit, and I love them. So I decided to put it up at the top. Now, funny is all I can think of is one of those headlamps that you use to walk through caves. So I'll change that up a little bit later on as well. Now, I used the card base to put down in the background, and then I put the one of the little layers from the card for one of the cards right there on the left-hand side, and then I put the picture on the right. And I'm just kind of looking around trying to figure out really what I'm going to do at this point. So I decided to take some real red ink, and we're going to do a little blending in the background. So what I do is I move everything. I'm going to mark off a little bit because I don't want the real red to be too dark. But I want, of course, to just add it in, but it'll get covered up. That little dark blot in the center will get covered up with that card base. All right, so we're just going to continue to add a little bit more, and then I'm going to put it back to see kind of where that placement is. And then I'm going to move that again, move the card base again, and we're going to put some down in the right-hand corner. And of course, I'm getting a little bit of that ink off first. And then, of course, I don't want to get it on the designer series paper, so I move it down just a little bit. And just going to ink up. We'll put the designer series paper back in place. I might be a perfectionist, unfortunately, with my scrapbook pages. So I tend to fussy with them quite a bit. And then, of course, from the blending, I got real red ink all over my fingers. But that is the name of the game, right? All right, so I move those out the way, and I bring in my real red marker because I really want some flicking onto this page because I feel like it brings out a little bit more elegance, I guess, since we're using all elegance paper and other stuff as well that coordinates with it. So I add a little bit of that flicking, and then of course I put everything back. And then I decide here that I want a little bit more flicking. I feel like the flicking was just not dark enough at first, and there wasn't enough of the splatter onto the actual page itself. So I come in, and then I also, you'll notice I did put down some of it in that left-hand bottom corner too. And I'm moving these back on slowly because I'm really just looking at them thinking, I am not so sure about the placement with the hearts up at the top and separating that designer series paper and the basic gray at the top. So I then start kind of looking at the stamps to kind of figure out, what my title is going to be. I did decide that my title is not necessarily going to be just one large title. I decided I wanted to do the stamp by the picture. So how I actually do the stamping first is when I am using a paper pumpkin kit, I will actually stamp on the piece of cardboard that comes in the kit. And I'll stamp down just to kind of make sure that I get a good solid image, and then I ink it up and pray real hard before I go and put it down on my page. And that sentiment says, "You're my favorite." And here I am being that whole perfectionist thing again. All right, and then I decide that I really want to put some hearts in some of the different areas, so I will end up putting them, and I use real red because real red is the kind of the theme of the color theme. And I'd already stamped this image before, so I didn't need to stamp off, but I put 2 down there under the picture, and then I put 1 up at the top, and that just kind of adds 3, and I'm figuring out here where I'm going to place it. And I couldn't decide if I wanted to add more hearts than that, but I ended up liking it just with the 3, so I left it at that. I don't want to necessarily overpower the picture, but I still wanted a little bit of extra. Now here, because I'm not liking those hearts at all, I decide, well, what if I try to blend on them and make them all red? Will that make me like them? So I'm going to take the time to blend. I decide here that I want it to be a little darker with the blending, so I kind of went over just a little bit of that area to see kind of how I would like it. And then I will get it as dark as I can as I can for that moment. I still feel like it looks a little pink, but it is fine as far as the color goes. It kind of matches the rest of the blending. So I put it back up there. I kind of look at it to kind of play with it for a minute and realize I don't like that either. So at this point, I decided that I'm going to take the other piece and maybe I could stamp on them with that little heart that I had stamped on the other part of the page. I lined it up to see if those hearts would even match. They're close enough. They're slightly off, but it's close enough. And so I ink it up. And I decide that I'm going to stamp every other heart. I wasn't so sure if every heart would work either, so I start with doing every other heart. Then I realize that it's not quite as dark and solid as I want it to be, so I just go over those 4 again. And then I add it up at the top. I kind of look at it. And I honestly still just do not like it. So I flip the blended one back over to the white side. And I'll fussy with it again in just a minute, but I decided that at this point, I probably just need to move on a little bit. And so I start focusing on the designer series paper part again, and thinking, how am I going to kind of make all that work? And so I decided to pull out a heart that is from the paper pumpkin kit. It's champagne. And I kind of place it in all the areas, decided, you know what? Nope, I don't like any of this. So I just move it. I move the hearts all together. And then I decide, well, what if this designer series paper and this basic gray, if they were right next to each other, how would it look? And I'll be honest, I loved that. I felt like it just, it added the right part to both the top and the bottom. It evened it out. It just made it look more unified instead of having the basic gray at the top and then the designer series paper at the bottom. So I'm here cutting it in half. And then I'm going to pull in that basic gray piece too, cut it in half. And then I make the decision that I'm going to play around with what pattern I want here. So here I decide on the bottom, I'm going to put the basic gray first. And then I'm going to put the designer series paper down. And I put it over the basic gray a little bit. And you'll see I change that in a minute as well. And then on the top, I put down the designer series paper first and then put down the basic gray. And honestly, I like both of them, but I decided to go with how the bottom is. But I moved that designer series paper up a little bit and put them side by side, which I think gives it a nice top and bottom border. And then I decided that I really liked this layout right here. So I was going to add some real red ribbon that I have. This is actually a linen thread that is like a braided, and it is a retired ribbon from Stampin' Up. But these scrapbook pages are pages that I hold on to for a long time. And so it's not like I can't use, I mean, obviously you can't buy this ribbon anymore, but it's something that I can hold on to for these kind of pages because, sometimes it's hard to have exactly what you want if you don't have some of those retired ribbons and embellishments. So now I'm going to, at this point, I like this layout. I'm good with all this. So now I'm going to start putting it all together. I'm going to actually adhere down pieces. Okay, so I'm putting down the bottom piece now. And again, I'm a perfectionist with my scrapbook pages, so I had to make sure that it was all lined up properly. And it doesn't really matter about the bottom. What I was really looking at on that one was the top, the two sides, because the bottom is obviously going to be covered up. So at this point, my husband actually walked in, and I have to say this because it's kind of funny. He was watching me put all of this down, and when he walked in, though, he saw all of this, and what he thought was that I had a crafting boo-boo and that I had had some blood left onto my papers. So that is what red will look like in your craft room when you take off all the other stuff. So anyway, he was a little concerned at first, but it was funny because he was like, "What did you do?" But anyway, so now I'm just going to put that designer series paper down. And here's the funny thing too with Real Red is that Real Red and Night of Navy. Night of Navy is my favorite Stampin' Up! Color, but Real Red and Night of Navy, no matter what you do with it, you end up wearing all of it all over your fingers. And it does look like you have had some crafting, like scissors or, our pokey tools and all of that. It looks like you could have a little accident when you have so much red on you. So I know after putting this one together, I ended up with a lot of red fingers. with it. So now I'm just kind of deciding if I really do want that placement for that ribbon in between the basic gray and the designer series paper, and I'm good with that. So I'm just going to use my seal for it, and I'm going to put it on the end, and then what I'm doing is I'm wrapping that adhesive around the ends there, and it kind of almost creates like a shoelace, like an end of a shoelace. So it gives it a little bit of like a stiffness with that adhesive, and then it's easy to put around and on the back to secure it. And I'm trying to make it so that it's, semi-tight. Then I realize here I may have gotten it a little too tight. So I adjusted a little bit, and then it's still coming up off of the page a little bit. So at this point I decide I can just put a glue dot in the center, and it'll help to adhere it down to the actual page itself. The glue dots that I pulled out are what we get in our paper pumpkin kits and other kits that Stampin' Up! Sells, and I save all of those and use them when I am crafting. And so now I'm just going to do the same thing just to the top. So we're kind of, giving it a good even border for both the top and the bottom. We're balancing it out. That's the word I've been looking for, is balancing. So, and here I'm being quite a perfectionist to make sure that my cardstock is completely even with the edge. There I pointed to both of the designer series paper because I wanted to make sure that the patterns were going in the exact same direction. So I made sure of that before I placed it down. All right, and then we're going to do the same thing to the ribbon that we did on the other side. We're going to put adhesive on both ends and wrap it around. And I know this takes a minute. I really shouldn't take that long to put ribbon around it, but I do. Again, these are what I go back and look at all the time. My husband and I don't have any kids, but one day I do hope to pass these on to my nieces because they love crafting with me. And so I feel like being able to give them a book that has memories in it, because a lot of the pages that I've done in the past include them. The different things that we've done with them and trips that we've taken. One of the next scrapbook pages you're going to actually have from me with a walkthrough on is going to be of a apple picking trip that I did with Harper. So she is the oldest niece that my husband and I have. So we are very close with our nieces and our nephew. All right, so here I'm going to attach this layer to that card base. And you'll see I get it a little crooked. I tried to fix it, then decided it just wasn't worth it to fix it, that it was fine. It kind of went along with the rest of the angled look in other places. So we just stick that there. I decide here that I want a little bit more of the blending, and so I pull the blending up a little bit more I felt like it gave it some extra. And then I'm going to take that real red pen again, add some more of the splatter to it. I really, because there is so much red on this page, I really wanted those splatter and the blending to kind of take that stark white and dull it just a little bit and only have very small parts. And you can tell at the very top that you've got this dark white, and then down at the bottom in that little side you have it as well. So I didn't show this on the video, but I did matte that picture onto a basic gray. I felt like it gave it a little bit, instead of doing a white one, I did the gray to kind of help it blend in with the border on both the top and the bottom. And then we're going to press that down. And now I'm going to start playing with these hearts again, because I was so determined I was going to somehow make them work. And I really just could not. I actually cut out a good chunk of the video from playing with that red heart. I just could not figure it out. So I ended up kind of liking this. So I ended up setting that on top and just leaving it there for a minute. I bring in the other stickers and I place them down on, I place this one down on the picture on the edge. And if you look closely, you will see that the corner of the picture pops up that sticker some. And I don't end up liking that part of it. So then I decided I wanted to do the love for an additional, or as the actual title. That's the main title of this page. So that's kind of up there alone by itself. And I did that so that it would stand out a little bit more. When you see things that are in like threes, your eye tends to draw to all those items. And so with just the love, I wanted it to be there. Now, I kind of thought, well, what if these hearts, I can bring these hearts back in, because, you know, I just can't let it go. And I put one on the bottom and one on the top. I end up liking that. It's not necessarily my favorite, but I am okay with that. I am satisfied at this point that it doesn't look as bad as the rest of it did. And it also brings in a little bit more of that white from the rest of the page as well. So here's where I take the heart off. I have to slowly remove it because I pressed it down so hard. And we're going to stick it up under the picture. So I'm just going to pick that corner of the picture up. And I am going to place it right up underneath. And at this, and I meant to say this kind of toward the beginning, and I'm so sorry about it, but I have the top of this page cut off because I was not looking at the screen properly. So I add another heart on the actual picture. And I wanted to kind of do some things in threes around that, but I decided that I didn't like this other one close to it, so I end up putting it down. Now, this is a two-part sticker heart. There is an outline border and then the heart itself, and you can see it once I place it down. You can see that line there. So I add that in. These right here are the dies for the January, February, March paper pumpkins, so they coordinate with all three of them. They come out with those quarterly. This is my favorite heart from the paper pumpkin, and so I really wanted to add it, but I didn't feel like it went well with it. There was no other pink on the page, and so I let go of using that one. Here I bring in that red heart again, thinking it's going to fit somewhere, and it does not. So I am happy with those hearts at the top and the bottom. So I pull in some glue dots. And because I can't find the other ones that I was using a minute ago, they happen to be to the left of the screen underneath where the heart was punched out. But I didn't see that when I was crafting. So I add these to the bottom, and I will bring in my T ruler to make sure that I have it even, because there are 8 hearts on it, and I want that middle part in between the 4 and 5 to be even with 6, the number 6 on the T ruler. And then we're going to flip it around to the other side of the paper, and we're going to repeat that. We're going to do the same thing again. And I didn't make you watch me put all those glue dots on it and take all the backings off. And again, you see me counting to make sure that I get to the right one. And I'm taking my time, my precious time on it, just trying to get it all even. All right, and then once that is done, we're going to flip it back around. So I pull in the champagne heart again, thinking, okay, well, I can add some more champagne to it, but I didn't like with this heart particularly, I didn't like how when you put it in the different spots, because of how I have the picture and that card base laid out, you've got white, red, in the background, and so I just didn't feel like it looked all that great. So you see me toss it there to the side. Sometimes these pages really are all about trial and error, you know, and I am a perfectionist on them, but in all honesty, when it all boils down to it, it's about the story that's behind the picture and not always just how you lay out a picture. So I gave up on all the hearts there. So what I decide now is to bring in some vellum. Again, Stampin' Up! Doesn't sell the vellum anymore, but I still have a ton of it. And this is the bow punch. And so I just cut out a bunch of that and decide that I'm going to soften a little bit of these areas with this vellum. If you ever want to soften anything or give any page that you're creating for scrapbooking or even any card that you're creating, any kind of crafting, paper crafting, vellum always softens some of your hard colors that you're using or bright colors. And then it also adds a touch of elegance, in my opinion. So I am a huge vellum fan, huge. And I will use it whenever I possibly can. So I punch all these out, and then I make the decision that I'm going to start tucking some of them under. But again, I still feel like I need to add more hearts. So I go and cut out this heart, which is from those January, February, March dies that I showed you earlier. And I feel like this heart takes away from the picture. It's so big. And so I end up separating it out, and then I take this, the outline part, and I start putting it everywhere to see. Now, it does pretty much fit around that heart. The dip part at the top is a little off, but anyway, so I toss it to the side because I'm just not sure about that one either. I pull up this side of the picture again, and I start tucking this vellum underneath. Now, one thing I do want to tell you is the larger parts of the bow punch, those leafy images, I do kind of rip off the bottom because you don't need it necessarily that long. And then, so I just start tucking in some pieces. And that one, I used practically the whole thing. I wanted that to be a little bit longer. And then I add one up there. Well, two up there. And then I pull back in this outline heart, and I play with it for just a minute and make the decision that, well, I really like that. I think it turned out great. And it doesn't look like the other one did with the red and the white in the background. So I also take that heart and move on from it because it is still too big. And then I decide that I'm going to add some more little hearts to the card front in this corner so that I can do some more balancing out of the embellishments and different cluster areas. And so here I am putting 2 of the champagne sticker hearts, and I'm just trying to decide where to place it there. And then I move that. I put the glue dots on the back of it, and then I take off all the backings, and then I go and adhere it down. And then I press the picture back down really good because I'm happy with how all of that is laid out. Now I pull in 2 of the hearts from this, from the Hearts of Elegance dies. And then I just got to poke this one out. The one I'm poking out now is a stitched one, and I love stitched hearts. They're my favorite. A heart, a star, give them to me all. Give me all those little things like that and stitched. And I like to add those to card fronts and scrapbook pages. I always like to add a little, bow or something like that to the top of them. Okay, so I add some adhesive to the back. I do use dimensionals, and then I also put some of the seal on the back because we're going to add some of the vellum foliage to the back of it as well. And then I end up adhering that kind of at an angle. Oh, I forgot. I did add a second piece to the other side. It needed something else to the other side of it. And so then I put it at an angle and adhere it down. And then I come over to the right side. And we're going to do the same thing, except for it's only going to go on one side for this one. And so I add 2 to that left side of that heart. And then we will put dimensionals on it. And then we will place it over there to the right. And so at that point, I kind of looked at everything and realized that I still wanted a little bit more of the splatter. I was just kind of doing like a double glance. So here I'm putting grid paper down so that I can add more splatter. And you'll see I grab another piece of it to cover up the love. And then I end up covering up the heart to make sure I don't get splatter on it either. And then we're going to add this stamp right here. So this stamp says, "You have my heart." Again, this is from the Paper Pumpkin kit. And I'm going to pull in that card stock piece after I ink it up so that I can make sure I'll get a solid image. But I decided instead of doing like a gold, the champagne hearts over the top of it, I decided to do another sentiment. And again, this one says, "You have my heart," which is just adorable. And I left the stamp there just a little while longer than I normally do because I wanted to make sure with the red in the background that it really got a good that all of that ink transferred from the stamp onto the paper. So here at this point, I am pretty much done. And so I show you all the different little areas on here. And I am happy. And then, of course, you know, it sat on my table for a little while after I filmed. And I had to come back in and add some of the embellishments from the kit itself. So the kit had these flirty flamingo hearts, but they almost look red. And so I added a whole bunch of them. So I wanted to add those flirty flamingo to the card front, and I actually think they look pretty red, so it all works out. So thank you so much for joining me. I enjoyed putting this page together. If you ever have any questions, please let me know, and I hope to see you guys soon on the next page. Have a great one.